Hello everyone, Jules here. Today I have created a tarot tag and I wanted to talk about chakra energy and decks. So I've created a tarot tag about the 7 chakras and how they can represent, how they can correspond to decks. So this video is about decks that can represent the chakras. So I've got 7 decks here and they are all tarot decks, but I've created a tarot tag for anyone who would like to participate, and the tarot or the tag can be tarot decks or oracle decks or both. So I'm just going to start with the first chakra, which is the root chakra. And the deck that I've chosen for the root chakra, and I've got the keyword of grounding for that chakra, is the Hidden Realms Tarot. So I'm just going to show some cards from the Hidden Realms deck. I find this deck very grounding. It's got a very earthy feel. So for me, this deck corresponds to the root chakra. So every time I look at this deck or use this deck, I always have this really earth connection. It's very grounding because I think it's got such a nature theme. It's really about nature and nature spirits. So this is probably the most grounding deck of tarot decks that I own. So that's a few cards from Tarot of the Hidden Realms, and it's a very grounding deck for me, for the root chakra. And the second chakra is the Sacral chakra, and that is about generation, physical generation, and for me it's about sensuality. So the most sensual deck I have, I think, is the Mary L. I find it a very sensual deck, even though it's a shamanic deck as well for me. I think a lot of the cards are very sensual. I don't know whether other people feel about that with this deck, but I do. I think a lot of the cards have that sensuality feel. So that's the Strength card. This is the Queen of Wands. Page of Swords. So even though this is a swords card, it still has that energetic vitality to it. Very physical feel. Six of Cups. And the Nine of Wands. So the Mary L. Tarot for me is the deck that relates to the sacral chakra, and the third chakra is the solar plexus chakra, and I have chosen my Thoth deck for the solar plexus because for me the key word for the solar plexus is power and empowering, but especially power, and the Thoth deck is the most powerful and empowering deck that I own. I remember when I first saw the Thoth deck about 15 years ago, and it took me another 5 years before I felt ready to own a Thoth deck and to start working with it. My first impression, my first response was that that's a very powerful deck, and I still feel like that about the Thoth. So just to show the kind of energy of the images, you can feel. It's not something that you feel within you. I don't feel the energy coming off the cards themselves, but I can sense the energy in the artwork. That's the Emperor. Very solar plexus. This is the Strength card, which Crowley renamed Lust, which is about lust for life. That's a very solar plexus approach. Sun card. Which is purely solar. The Ace of Wands, probably the most fiery Ace of Wands ever created. The Prince of Wands, and we've got Leo the Lion here. Such a beautiful card. And the Princess of Wands. There's a lot of solar plexus energy here. Now for the fourth chakra, which is the heart chakra, I have chosen the Art of Love Tarot. It's the gentlest and I think the most purely loving deck that I have. The Art of Love Tarot, and the art is by Tony Carmine Salerno. I have reviewed this deck, I think, on my channel. I'm pretty sure I have. This deck is about to be renamed, and it's going to be called the Tarot of Light. That will be coming out. There'll be a reissue this year, and it's going to be called the Tarot of Light. I don't know if anything else is going to be changed about the cards, but this deck is going to be renamed to the Tarot of Light. So I'm just going to show a few cards from the Art of Love Tarot. This is the High Priestess. This is one of my favourite images, the Empress. Ace of Hearts, which I'm fairly sure is the Cups or water element. This deck represents love for me. It's just so gentle, and it's comforting at a time when if you need a deck when I suppose you want something that is not going to be disturbing or irritating in any way. This is a deck that's really good for calming the mind and probably calming the whole all over attitude. Ace of Hearts, Three of Hearts, and quite a beautiful Page of Hearts. So there's some of the cards from the Art of Love Tarot. In some ways, I like the original name for the deck. I think it's relevant, but they obviously have their own reasons for changing the name of the deck. So that is the Art of Love Tarot for the Heart Chakra. And number 5 chakra, I'm referring to my notes here, is the Throat Chakra, and my key word for that is messages. Because it's the Throat Chakra, I've got the keyword of messages. So I sort of mean decks that kind of provide messages, or you find it like a talkative type of deck. It's like you always get what you're sort of asking, or messages from this deck. And I've chosen the Victorian Fairy Tarot for this, which might surprise a few people. Here's the box. I think it's out of print now. I find this deck really quite uncanny. It's one of those decks that, for me, I don't use this deck unless I really want an answer to a question, something that I have on my mind. It's that type of deck. The Victorian Fairy Tarot. It's a beautiful deck too. So this is the Three of Spring. And from memory, I'm fairly sure this is divided into seasons for the elements, for the suits. And I'm saying from memory here because, as I was saying, I don't use this deck unless I really want an answer to something. It's sort of an upfront and candid deck. The cards are really lovely and beautiful to look at, but I do find that it's very candid. You will get the message that you want. Well, I do, from this deck. So that's the Three of Spring. So people might think, oh, well, this is a fairy tale type of deck. Well, that's not what I have found. Herald of Autumn. So the pages are called heralds in this deck. Herald of Autumn. I may have reviewed this deck as well on my tarot deck review playlist. So if I have, I will try to highlight, I will try to put these near the top of my tarot deck playlist for people to look at. It's a Herald of Autumn. Beautiful card. Goblin Market. This is the Devil card. I really like this card. I think it's inspired by a wonderful poem called Goblin Market. I think it was a poem and a small story. I think it's by Christine Rossetti from memory. I think Goblin Market is quite a long poem that is almost written like a story. I suppose you would call that lyric poetry. So that's Goblin Market for the Devil card. It's quite a famous poem, Goblin Market. The Moon. What a beautiful card. I really love these images and I love the artwork, but as I said, I don't use this deck unless I really want an answer to something. Such a beautiful moon card. And this is the Temperance card. It looks a little bit like the Ace of Cups, but it's a beautiful Temperance card. It's really lovely. So that's some of the cards from the Victorian Fairy Tarot. That is for the throat chakra for messages. Now, the third eye chakra, I know a lot of people would think about this in regards to intuition, which you can if you wish, or perception. I have thought of the third eye chakra for myself in this regard. I have thought about this in regard to the mind. So that's how, I'm using the mind keyword for myself. So what I've chosen for the mind, for the third eye chakra, is the Quantum Tarot by Chris Butler. This is the first edition Quantum Tarot. And I really I have the first and second edition of this deck because I really love Chris Butler's artwork. I think this is great. This is based on quantum physics, but it's not a difficult deck. You know, it's not sort of too intellectual. It's really, I think, corresponding quantum physics to metaphysics, which is how I see things anyway. And it has the subtitle Quantum Tarot, a Tarot of New Physics. So this is the first edition that was published by Kunati, but Kunati went out of business soon after publishing this deck. So you probably would have trouble getting this first edition now. So some cards that I've chosen from the Quantum Tarot. There is the Fool card. I think the artwork is great with this deck. The Emperor. And this deck is a bit different to the second edition. The second edition is similar, but it's still not quite the same. Some of the cards were changed. The Hermit. And these cards have a really nice matte finish. Temperance. A great card. This reminds me of the title for the card in the Thoth, which is Art. But Crowley saw temperance or art as alchemy, and I think of alchemy with this card. It's like you can really see the chemistry working in this card. So this is Temperance. So these are really good for sort of thinking in alternative ways. That's why I've related this third eye chakra to the mind. The Moon, beautiful Moon card. It's beautiful. So there's some of the cards from the Quantum Tarot First Edition by Chris Butler in regard to the third eye chakra, which I have corresponded to the mind and thought. So for the final chakra, which is the crown chakra, I'm using the keywords high vibe, high vibration, the highest vibration for the crown chakra. It's actually another deck by Chris Butler. It's probably one of my top 5. I love this deck. The Healing Light Tarot. This is an amazing deck. I'm pretty sure, I think I have reviewed this one too. This deck is not only amazing for the art, it is really high vibration. It's one of the few decks that I have, out of many, many decks, that I instantly bonded with. It was just automatic. That hardly ever happens to me. I usually need a bit of time to get to know a deck a bit before that happens. But this was instant. I have an instant bond with this deck. It's wonderful. The Healing Light Tarot by Christopher Butler. Here's a few cards from this deck, and when you see, I think, the artwork, I think you'll be able to see why it is so high vibration. And all of the cards are basically like that. It's not just a few, it's basically all the cards. So look at the Magician card. And calling this the healing light, especially the light word, is really appropriate. Just an amazing deck. Justice. Hanged Man. beautiful moon card. And the Queen of Swords. I mean, even the Queen of Swords is a beautiful high vibration card. I know there'd be some people who are not maybe all that keen on the Queen of Swords or, you know, swords cards. But look at this card. It's just really beautiful. The Queen of Swords. So there's some of the cards from the Healing Light Tarot, corresponding for me with the crown chakra. So I'm going to put some of the names of these decks below the video, and I'm going to put each of the 7 chakras and my keywords for each of the chakras. So for anybody who may want to participate and do a video response to this video, if you would like to, I'm going to, as I said, put those details about the chakras and the keywords below the video, and I'm going to list the 7 decks that I've shown. And I would also say that if you also would like to make a video response, that you could choose a deck for each of the chakras, or maybe decks for one chakra in particular. If you don't want to do all of the chakras, you could do any of the chakras that you would like. So any decks to represent any of the chakras or all of the chakras, like I've just done. And you can choose tarot and or oracle decks. I happen to have chosen tarot decks for these. So the hashtag is going to be called Chakra Energy Decks, and these are decks that represent the chakras. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll put the details below the video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.